All right, have you ever wondered what the structure of a $1 million practice actually looks like? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the four primary places that you need to focus in your business so that it can not only efficiently and effectively run, but especially how to structure your front desk for your practice so that it is going to be top notch. And by the end of this, you'll have the exact steps that you need and the processes that you need to begin structuring your front desk for the best success so that you can get back to growing your practice as opposed to it being a leaky bucket. Now, most practices they use their front desk as kind of the cheap the cheapest possible place and the dumping ground for all things that the practice needs to get done. They kind of just their customer service, they're helping with claims and billing, they're yeah, handling phone calls and reschedules and all those kind of things, and they kind of frantically, or as you're passing by between patients, you become the place to actually drop off your problems or your concerns. And now I've got somebody who's maybe a high school student or a very cheaply waged employee that I've got sitting here at the front desk. And now your front desk kind of becomes a leaky bucket. And the secret to most of these practices that are doing $1 million plus per year is they are very successful and they have a very rock solid front desk. They know where leads are in the pipeline, they're following up with them consistently, they feel like a well-oiled machine. They're a part of the team, and there's this really cohesive bunch that's happening at the front desk. And that is the key secret I see in a lot of these practices is that their front desk, they're rock stars. And if we don't have a rock star at the front desk, we're definitely going to have some issues when we're dialing in this if I don't have that rock star, right? You're going to have trouble growing. You're going to spend more money on marketing. You're going to chase more new patients, but you're not able to actually get people in the door and the practice isn't growing like it needs to. So I'm going to break down four primary places that I see not only in my practice, but our clients' practices that we've helped grow and scale and continue to add revenue back to their practice. I'm going to highlight the four primary areas that I see being the most kind of bang for your buck or helping you get to the next step. And those four places are sales process, it is talent at the actual front desk, which is what you need, and then leadership, and then lastly, management. And so we're going to unpack each of those, some common mistakes that I see, and what you have to ultimately be able to get to that particular point. So, what are the places we want to do? We want to dive into the sales processes here to start. So, what exactly does that even mean? That's the probably the lifeblood of the business, right? So as a lead comes in, this is how I like to break this down the sales process. When I've got leads coming in, the conversations that I'm actually having with these leads, and then what is the follow-up process actually after that lead, whether or not they scheduled or they didn't schedule. And you can very simply break down the sales process that way. Now, the big mistake that I see is leads are kind of all over the place. I don't have a centralized place for actually tracking them. I don't, my front desk has no way to actually handle objections. They don't really know what to say, or there's no consistency in what they're saying. And then I have no consistent follow up with those leads on the back end, and that just really creates a recipe for disaster. And no matter how much that's the top of your funnel, and no matter how much you're pouring into that funnel, you're losing leads kind of out of the side of it. And that could be a major issue, right? You're gonna have to spend more money on marketing. That's the difference in hey, you getting 100 leads and doing $1 million, or you having to suddenly get 200 or 300 leads to actually get to that point. And that's a really tough place to be when you're trying to get that many leads in the door. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's much better to be efficient. And so when we're looking and diagnosing the sales process, how are they finding you? Do you have a CRM? Do you have a place that you're actually putting these leads? And are your pipelines actually organized in such a way that helps you consistently follow up with these people? Or if somebody texts in, at a minimum, they show up in your pipeline in your CRM, and you know to reach out to them on a phone call at that point, right? Now, the other big piece of this is the sales conversation that's actually happening, and this is especially big for the front desk because most of them don't know how to handle objections. Somebody asks about cost or ask about insurance, or what does a typical evaluation looks like. I mean, I can't tell you how many practices I'll do a call with, where I'll just call in, act like a secret shopper, and the practice, their front desk can't even tell me what happens during an evaluation or a typical plan of care, which is a pretty big issue, right? And so, what is, making sure that we have, at least at a minimum, a script to give them a framework to begin having conversations, and especially being able to handle the big objections. Do you take my insurance? What's the cost of services? I need to think about it, or I want to talk to my spouse. How to be able to not only answer those, but ultimately prevent some of those objections. Now, if you need some objection handling framework, I literally have tons of other videos on this. Feel free to find them in our channel or in our Skool community if you're catching this in the Skool community. Now, the final piece of this is, after I actually get that person scheduled, or if they didn't schedule, I need to have a follow up process with them, either some type of nurturing sequence to get them warm to actually come into the clinic, or on the back end of this, I need to um, uh, actually be able to nurture these people if they didn't want to come in, right? Do I give them a re-offer in a couple months? Do I at least get them on our newsletter so that I can nurture them and they're at least aware of who we are and what it is that we do at that point? So that's kind of the sales process in a nutshell. That's the foundation of this. And I think you need to spend a lot of time actually evaluating, and can you truly say yes to yourself? I know where leads are coming in, and I've evaluated my lead flow. I know the conversations we're having are there, and that there's actually a process for that, and that my follow up is actually where it needs to be as well. Because so many of you guys think that it is a talent issue at the front desk, but really it's a process issue, or a leadership and a management issue, because you've maybe got an A player or B player at the front desk, but you've got a C or D player sales process. Nobody can be successful in that, and then they're going to get frustrated by it, and their performance is going to continue to drop simply because your processes were an absolute mess. And so, I think that's the foundation of the house for your, especially your front desk and the structure of your practice. Now, moving into the talent piece of this, I think everybody over focuses on talent. Again, leadership, management, sales process is probably more important in my opinion, because you can take a B or C player and turn them into an A player with the right processes. So, what is the mistake people make with talent? They rush hires. They hire kind of a college student, or somebody maybe who is in grad school, or they hire a family member, and then now they get, or maybe somebody who's had experience in the past. And people have experience typically are just ones that have kind of bounced back and forth between jobs, trying to find their like perfect fit, and they haven't found it yet. And then you hire them for your front desk, and they underperform for you as well. And so, because of that, then you have to make another rush hire, right? Oh crap, they left. I need to hire somebody really quickly. And then you'll make another hire and another hire and another hire. And now one bad hire has led to six, and a big revenue leak for your practice. So, talent, we absolutely cannot settle for subpar talent, right? We need to be able to attract high quality talent. And when we have a solid process, solid sales process, management, leadership tools, then that talent, now you're able to attract a much higher talent pool. And so many of you guys will lose high quality talent simply because you're not willing to pay an extra $2 an hour. It's a pretty silly reason to want to lose talent. And so, although I don't think it's only about money in this particular case. So, some of you guys are bottlenecked by, maybe you're in a big city where cost of living is very, very expensive. I'm starting to see this in New York, California, some of these places where minimum wage is getting very expensive, and maybe you can't afford as good of quality talent. Or you're in a really rural area and you're just having a hard time getting solid quality applicants, can definitely be a big, big problem as well. And what I want to see happen in this particular case is, you could also look into a virtual route at that point. I think it can be really helpful, especially for phone calls and incoming sales calls. I think that's a perfect route for going virtual for a lot of practices, and a lot of them don't consider it. Now, you definitely probably want to focus in the US at that point. You don't want to get into potentially the Philippines or some other things, although it can be very, very helpful if the conversation is not in depth. But I do find that client facing it's super critical to have somebody who's a solid native English speaker, and who can ultimately relate to these patients. So it doesn't sound like it's coming from a call center, and they sound like they're part of the practice, and much more integrated at that point. So, talent, you could potentially consider outsourcing it if you're having issues with that. But regardless of the fact, you need to have a pool of candidates at all times. I use what's called an evergreen hiring technique, where we constantly have an application going and we're constantly sourcing talent. And at any given point, if I have a front desk staff member leave, I'm able to actually call on my Rolodex of people, if you will, right? And this is exactly what we do in our admin agency as well. Is I just constantly have this open application going, and I would encourage you. I did a video on this. You can find that in our YouTube channel, or you can find it in our Skool community. Both of those links are below, where at any point I can call on the right front desk talent. Now, the last two pieces of this are leadership and then ultimately management, which I know sound kind of similar. But leadership really comes back to so many of you guys treat your front desk. There's no leadership structure. You have no kind of commanding authority over them, if you will, or you have no connection with them, or they have no connection with the team. And that's one of the biggest reasons why most front desk staff turnovers, they don't feel connected to the leadership team in some capacity, whether it's you, an office manager, or someone else who's kind of superior to them. And when they don't have that connection, every single time I ask the front desk team what's happening with that, it almost always comes back to, well, I just didn't feel a part of the office, and I ultimately look for somewhere else. And that's why people will leave for a dollar or two more. It seems silly that somebody would do that, but they do that because they don't feel connected and there's no leadership in the office. So it's super important that you have a clear organizational chart that they are aware of and you actually execute it. So an org chart isn't going to change someone's um, connectedness to the office, but if you actually have an office manager that meets regularly with the front desk team, or if you have a kind of a head front desk person that actually helps lead that person, helps them feel fulfilled and feels meaning in what it is that they're doing by meeting with them regularly, having consistent touch points with somebody on the team. And same thing for you as the owner, right? So as opposed to you just kind of coming through, throwing demands on them when you're between patients, like actually sitting down with them once a month and finding out what fulfills them, what brings them joy in the role that they're doing. What do they want to do more of? What do they want to do less of? Because if you can spend that extra time doing that, then you're not going to be constantly having to turn over the front desk and constantly having to train somebody. And actually having some type of structure with some consistency in meeting and creating meaning for the front desk is going to be a big key. Now, the last piece of this is management. What does the management structure of the front desk actually look like? Most people, they'll track some numbers, they'll freak out because the schedule is not as full as it once was, and they'll go back, they'll meet with the front desk once, talk about the problems that they're having, and then they'll never bring it up again. And then the schedule will get light again in 6 months, and the same cycle kind of repeats itself. And so, as opposed to, and this creates resentment at that point, right? And I think this is why most of you guys don't have a solid leadership and management playbook, is because you're worried about giving feedback to the front desk. They don't listen to the feedback that you give them anyways, and it's because you don't follow up consistently with the problems and challenges that they have. And the key is several things here from a management standpoint, and one of that is, hey, everybody at the front desk should be cross trained, right? Some of this kind of comes back to leadership as well, where if somebody does need to leave, or everybody feels supported at that point, or if somebody's a little bit busier than the other, I've got some overlap, right? So that's one big key of this, and by cross trained, I don't mean your office manager also answers all the phone calls. That's not an office manager. You just created another front desk person at that point. And so the other big piece of this is I need to have key performance indicators, or KPIs, that are self-reported from the front desk, right? Where whoever has whatever role, if I've got somebody who does collections, they have collections KPIs. If I have somebody who does follow-up and does sales calls with everybody, they've actually got KPIs that should be tracked on their own, and they should know what those metrics actually are. So collections, for example, hey, we need to have 95% collection rate today, and they need to know what that actually looks like. And if they don't, then hey, there's your first piece of the management pie, where it should be self-governing and self-regulating, where they could just look at it and say, hey, I'm underperforming, and I know I need to do something about it, or I need to reach out to my supervisor. Or same thing with phone calls. Hey, I need to get 5 new leads on the books today. I only got 3. I'm under par for the day, and then over the course of the week, I need to get that back. Or if it's under par for the whole week, then great. Let's actually have a meeting and try to figure out why we are having these issues at this particular point. And when the person has ownership of their own kind of KPIs or their own um, measurements of success, they're going to actually be able to get to where they want to go. And most of you guys don't have any of this stuff in place, and everybody kind of sits and wonders, hey, what actually defines success? And the only thing that defines success is revenue coming in and how full the schedule is, which is a very long lever to actually look at, right? When I'm looking at the schedule being full, this has been going on, or not being full. If the schedule isn't full, you've been looking at that for 2 or 3 months, right? Before you catch the problem, as opposed to let me catch the problem at the end of the day or the end of the week with the KPIs that I'm actually having this person, this front desk person actually put out. And so, um, once we have those KPIs out, we need to be having regular meetings with this particular person, whether it's weekly, it's a quick weekly 5 minute check in. Hey, numbers look really good this week. Are there any things you need from me to help be continue to be successful? You're doing a great job, right? Or hey, if things aren't where they need to go, you can spend 5 minutes casting a little vision about how they're going to actually get up to speed, right? And that's where those regular staff meetings can be such a critical point to A, help them feel connected, and B, also to help them continue to progress, continue to get better, and continue to keep the schedule full, which is ultimately the lifeblood of the business. So that's the 4 big stages of this. I know there's a lot. I've got some additional videos here in our YouTube channel or our Skool community where you can watch more of these things if you want help more specific on the sales process, finding talent, or the leadership and management side of these things. We've got much more in-depth trainings of it. But either way, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.